Welcome back, viewers. You're watching India Tonight. Of course, in the first part of the show, we were talking about how there's a job crunch as far as the global tech industry is concerned. But it's a completely different scenario here in India this political season. Thanks to the Mahagathbandhan, which has come out with its manifesto. And as expected, there have been a slew of promises, some practical and some, well, outright outlandish. From rupees 2,500 monthly to women to 200 units of free electricity, and also forming law for one government job to each family in the state within just 20 days of forming the India Bloc government. The Mahagathbandhan is promising it all. But the big question, of course, is where will all this money come from? Before we, of course, discuss this in detail and understand what the macroeconomics behind these poll promises, let's listen in to what Tejashwi Pran had to say.
और आज खास दिन है हम सब लोगों के लिए। बिहार को हम लोगों को बनाने का काम करना है। केवल सरकार ही नहीं बनाना, बल्कि बिहार को बनाना है। बिहार कैसे बनेगा, हमारा विजन क्या होगा, रोड मैप क्या होगा, ब्लूप्रिंट क्या होगा, हम लोगों ने हमेशा बिहार की जनता के सामने, आप लोगों के समक्ष अपनी बात को रखा है। और आज भी बेहद खुशी की बात है कि आज हम सब लोग महागठबंधन के सभी साथी मिलकर के साझा रूप से आप लोगों के समक्ष, बिहार के लोगों के समक्ष संकल्प पत्र जो है रखा है, यानी हम लोगों का प्रण है कि बिहार को नंबर 1 कैसे बनाए। ये दलों और दिलों का संकल्प और प्रण है। एक एक घोषणा दिल से लिया हुआ प्रण है। अपने प्रण को प्राण झोंक करके भी हम लोगों को अगर पूरा करना पड़े तो अपने प्रण को हम लोग जो है पूरा करेंगे।
All right, so of course the alliance wants to make Bihar the number 1 state, but can that be made with promises that perhaps cannot be met? We'll discuss this and more with Vijay Sardana, who's an economist. Also joining us on the broadcast is Karan Verma. He's an author and political analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET. Now, let me come to you, Mr. Sardana. The key promise of giving one government job for every family within a prescribed time frame. The big question essentially is where will these jobs come from and how will these jobs be funded within the given budget without creating a fiscal deficit-like situation for the state government?
First of all, good evening to you and the fellow panelists as well as the viewers. Let's do the basic mathematics to understand what we are doing. There are 3 crores families in Bihar. It means we are talking about 3 crore government jobs in Bihar. That is one aspect. Minimum salary in Bihar for unskilled worker is 11,000 rupees. So either you are assuming that everybody who is going to be recruited is unskilled means 11,000 rupees. Even police constable salary is around 40,000 rupees. I am going with the basic number of 11,000. So 3 crore families into 11,000 per month into 12 per year, it means you need something around 4 lakh crores every year to fulfill just one promise. 4 lakh crore. The total revenue collection of Bihar government as per Bihar data or means budget is 70,000 crores only. And remaining comes from the grant and assistance from central government. The special aid which is coming from the central government, which I say grant in aid from center, is almost at par with the total revenue collection by the state. And then there is a tax share of Bihar which is around 1,40,000 crore. So when you look into numbers, fact is this year itself they were not able to invest in Bihar because they had no money neither for agriculture, nor SC/ST welfare, nor education, nor rural development, not even urban development, not even irrigation. There was a drastic cut in everything. And let me give you one example for your audience. Education, there was a deduction of 20% because they had no money. In case of social welfare and nutrition, there was a deduction of 27%. In case of energy, there was a deduction of 36%. Urban development, deduction of 19%. Roads and bridges, we have seen bridges collapsing in Bihar, 25% deduction. Agriculture and allied activities, deduction of 14%. On the allocated budget, they had to cut it down because they had no money. Now, with this election promise, what they are trying to say, there is no money. It is just a jumla. It is just a eyewash or a smoke screen just to come to power. So Bihar has to understand that these election manifestos have no meaning irrespective of which political party says, because today Bihar cannot meet its basic requirement. Any new promise in election manifesto by any party, it is just a eyewash or keeping voters in dark.
Right. Absolutely. Karan, coming to you now, of course, Vijay Sardana ji basically says that just to fulfill one promise, the Bihar government, of course, the government, if they're elected, the Mahagathbandhan will need more money than the total annual budget of the state just to fulfill one promise. Now, the big question, of course, Karan, is that do parties even calculate these figures before releasing manifestos? Because we've seen what's happened in Karnataka, we've seen what's happened in Telangana, what's happened in Himachal Pradesh. Time and again, this formula just does not win. It might, win you elections, but it just does not work. So, what exactly is the calculation that goes behind?
I think the calculation is very simple. It doesn't pay to promise. You can promise them the moon, then very quietly and meekly say that the center is not cooperating with us perhaps or whatever, and then get away with this. Once you won the election, you're there for 5 years. That's their calculation. That's the calculation Aam Aadmi Party had. When they inherited Punjab had a 2.8 lakh crore of debt. And it was borderline thinking that it's now passing the 45% ceiling of the GDP. At that time, the resolve of the then AAP government was to bring it down. Today, it's ballooned close to 4 lakh crores. We are talking about a similar trend in Karnataka, where when they inherited in 2022-23, it was at 5.2 lakh crores. Today, it's staring at 8 lakh crores. So we've had such parties who've promised the moon, who've taken out certain money for guarantee schemes like in Karnataka, and then they have had to monetize their assets. Today, Ernst & Young is sitting on a consultancy report in Karnataka government, giving them consultancy about how to monetize your assets. Today, that's the situation this Karnataka government is reduced to. As a result, what happens is the inflation does spiral out of control. Today, we've seen whether it's stamp duty, whether it's milk, whether it's eggs, anything. Right. The prices have gone up in Karnataka. It's amongst the top 3 states as far as inflation is concerned. Punjab, we are seeing how it's teetering on
absolutely, Karan. So how is it really pro-people? How are those policy promises really pro-people? That remains to be probed further. But let me ask you a follow-up question. Because of the fact that the same leaders have been in and out of power for decades, why didn't they create jobs earlier? Does this promising of jobs and, unrealistic promises, if I may add, does this signal panic within the alliance ahead of elections?
So, Sumita, honestly, leave aside jobs. They couldn't even give the basics. If we talk about the RJD government right now, when they left power back in 2005, they did enjoy power for a brief while, for a year and a half when Nitish had crossed over to the other side. But barring that, can you imagine the state of Bihar? Only 7% households had an electricity connection at that time amongst the rural households. 2 to 3% had a tap water inside their homes. So they could not even fulfill the basic responsibilities that a state does. Leave aside creating an environment conducive for businesses to grow and jobs to prosper. That's the dire state that left Bihar in at that time. And the opposition, all they're fixated on is to somehow dole out freebies, somehow get to power. But what they don't understand is they need to create a model. Someone somewhere worked very hard to ensure Gujarat became a manufacturing hub. Someone worked very hard. In fact, generations worked hard. Rather than thinking of the short-term goals, they were vision-oriented, which is why Maharashtra could become the industrial state that it became. So there are lots of examples. Haryana today is doing well. So they need to focus on the long term. But if your whole endeavor is desperation for power, these are the kind of measures we're going to have. Today what's happened is propaganda gone berserk. We always had propaganda. But this is not even feasible. Even the calculators have refused to calculate. That's the condition of this manifesto. That's how it's been received by people.
You are, of course,
and people
talking.
look to it. People watch your shows. People watch other shows.
Quickly
they understand
interrupting
that
you there. Quickly interrupting you right there. You spoke about Gujarat. You spoke about a lot of states, but the reality is, it's not a one-way street. If you see these populist promises being made from both ends, it's not just the Mahagathbandhan. It's also the BJP. It's also the ruling party that makes these promises. The only difference is when the BJP does it, it is termed as a welfare scheme. But when the BJP doesn't do it, it is called a revdi by the Prime Minister. Similarly, when it comes to the opposition, when the BJP does something, they call it vote chori and they call it other names. But when they do it, they call it vikas, they call it sushasan. So how exactly does it benefit anyone? Because at the end of the day, every state, regardless of who's ruling it, faces severe fiscal strain and delayed welfare schemes. We're looking at what's happening in states ruled by both the BJP as well as the Congress. The reality is nobody benefits out of this.
Can I answer this? Yeah, it's for me, Ashish.
That question is for Karan.
Yeah. Okay. So Ashish, it's a very valid question. I'll give you an example, a recent example. Just some days back in Bihar, which is poll bound, of course, one can question the timing, but 75 lakh women have been given 10,000 rupees direct in their accounts. Now, this is seeing their business proposal, keeping that in mind, where they're even eligible for a 2 lakh loan within 6 months if their project is feasible. Now, I don't call this a revdi. I don't call this a freebie, because this is empowering women to pursue their dreams and to build an enterprise and probably hire more people tomorrow. So if you have such job-oriented schemes, we can't brush them all with the same paint and say that all of them are freebies. There are certain schemes where you put money in the hands, but you empower them because you tie them with a scheme where somebody has to come up with a business proposal, make sure that comes to fruition. That's a different thing altogether, rather than just a direct cash transfer or just promising freebies without any return, without any growth, without any impetus to the economy. So I think we'll be doing grave injustice if we equate the two. I think there are certain schemes where the BJP, take for example Mudra. We can't call Mudra a freebie. It's given self-employment to crores of people. It's had a job multiplier effect. So we have to make that distinction between welfare, between what scheme is empowering and what is a hardcore freebie. When you have a freebie which doesn't give you any return and which goes to
absolutely,
people
Karan, I do agree with your point, but we also have to note the point that the 2 lakh loan scheme that you're talking about, it's coming in just ahead of elections, and that point needs to be, of course, focused on. But on that note, let me also go across to Mr. Sardana. Mr. Sardana, shouldn't there be a mechanism where political parties are held accountable for not just their promises, but also for the cost-benefit analysis? And can an option to introduce penalties, can that be made a legal viability?
I have filed a PIL in Supreme Court, which is a Supreme Court from last 4 years. Supreme Court is also not taking this matter seriously. My proposal is very simple. Whenever election manifesto or any political party makes a election promise, in the same manifesto, there has to be a statement of accounts that whatever they are promising, what is going to be the cost and what is going to be the source of funding. Will you add up new taxes? You will take loan from or borrowing from the market, or you will merge old scheme into a new and give a new name to it. What is going to be the source of funding? Because Supreme Court repeatedly says that people should make an informed choice. And when we are filing PIL in Supreme Court to make it mandatory so that citizens of India should have an informed choice, Supreme Court is sitting on that document. What this indicates? It means that Supreme Court itself, with due regards to the judges and the Honorable Court, why we are not taking this matter seriously? Because every day, billions of dollars are going wasted. Do you know how much, as a political system of India, we invest in the name of elections and freebies in the name of welfare? With a pure political agenda for elections, it is $100 billion a year. Do the calculation. $100 billion a year we invest just
Absolutely.
to win elections.
Mr. Vijay Sardana, the reason why we are having this discussion in the first place is because the calculations aren't adding up. And if we sitting outside the ecosystem can actually point this out, why not these political parties who actually release these manifestos in the public forum? And interestingly, you spoke about the Supreme Court not acting on your PIL. It is the same Supreme Court that in February this year also slammed the freebie culture before the elections and said that we are basically creating a class of parasites. So it's interesting that on one hand, the Supreme Court slams it. On the other hand, as you claim, the Supreme Court is not acting on it. We'll of course keep tracking it. We'll keep holding those in power accountable and keep questioning all of these promises made interestingly just before the elections. And on that note, Vijay Sardana and Karan Verma, it was an absolute pleasure speaking to you. We'll of course keep coming back to you for more on Bihar elections and all the drama that's happening around it. And viewers, with that,